I know that feeling. That pain, that hate, that burning, unendurable need for retribution.
In the shadowy world of vampires and ancient legends, there exists a character named Olrox, an enigmatic and formidable figure from the Netflix original animated series Castlevania Nocturne. This ancient Aztec vampire, hailing from the lands of America, embodies a blend of sophistication, elegance, and a cunning power that belies his true nature. Olrox's story is a complex tapestry of love, loss, and vengeance. His journey begins in the late 15th to early 16th century, during the tumultuous times of the Aztec civilization. He miraculously survived the near annihilation of his people at the hands of Spanish conquistadors, a trauma that deeply marked his psyche. Over the centuries, Olrox traversed various lands, eventually falling in love with a Mohican man in Britain's North American colonies. In a bid to immortalize their love, Olrox turned his partner into a vampire. However, their dream of eternal romance was shattered when Julia Belmont, a formidable adversary, killed his lover. This act ignited a burning desire for retribution in Olrox's heart, propelling him on a path of vengeance. In 1783, following the American Revolution, Olrox's quest for revenge led him to Boston. Here, he confronted Julia Belmont in a dramatic and fierce battle at the docks. Julia, attempting to ensure the safety of her son Richter by sending him to France, found herself in a deadly struggle against Olrox. The confrontation ended with Olrox transforming into a massive feathered serpent-like dragon and defeating Julia. However, he spared young Richter, leaving him with a haunting promise of future retribution. Years later, in 1792, Olrox's story took another turn as he traveled to France, summoned by regional vampires to witness the ascension of the vampire messiah, Countess Erzsebet Bathory. Welcomed by Count Vaublanc, Olrox chose to navigate the complexities of this new environment on his own terms, staying at a local inn and delving into the intricate political and supernatural machinations surrounding Bathory's arrival. Olrox's investigations uncovered a web of alliances and schemes. He learned of the vampires' uneasy alliance with the Abbot of Maschekal, their plan to amass bodies for the creation of an army of night creatures, and the existence of an infernal machine used for this nefarious purpose. Olrox's strategic involvement with key players, including Bathory's servant Drolta's Waints, the Abbot's loyal guard Mizrak, and even Richter, added layers to his complex character. In a surprising twist, Olrox engaged in an intimate relationship with Mizrak, initially for strategic purposes, but gradually developing genuine feelings for him. This relationship highlighted Olrox's capacity for love and his internal conflict between his vampiric nature and his human emotions. Olrox's discovery of a night creature retaining human memories led him to a pivotal encounter in the Abbey's cellars, where he stole a spellbook that was crucial for the creation of night creatures. This act intersects with Richter's mission to rescue his friend Edouard, leading to a confrontation that forces Richter to flee in panic upon recognizing the killer of his mother. The night of Bathory's arrival brought Olrox to a crossroads. He publicly pledged allegiance to Bathory, yet his true intentions remained shrouded in secrecy. Later, he provided Richter and his allies with the stolen spellbook, a key to destroying the infernal machine, despite their initial hostility towards him. The final battle at the Abbey saw Olrox observing from the shadows as Richter and his team, including Mizrak, fought fiercely against the vampires. Olrox's intervention to save Mizrak and his subsequent emotional turmoil when Mizrak accused him of cowardice revealed the depth of his feelings and the complexity of his character. As a tall, dark-skinned vampire with long black hair and bright green slit eyes, Olrox's appearance is as striking as his personality. He is often seen in an indigo or purple coat, with pointy ears adorned with earrings, and a tiny purple jewel in his hair. His appearance reflects his Aztec heritage and vampire nature, creating an aura of mystery and power. Olrox's personality is shaped by his experiences and beliefs. Disillusioned by the gods and royalty due to the subjugation of his people, he is skeptical of authority and strategic in his allegiances. His devotion to his late Mohican partner and his genuine love for Mizrak reflect his capacity for deep emotional connections. His actions, such as delivering the abbot's book to Richter, demonstrate a complex morality that defies simple categorization. Powers and abilities. Olrox, the ancient vampire, is imbued with a plethora of abilities that are both fearsome and awe-inspiring. His vampiric physiology grants him an array of enhanced capabilities, including formidable strength, remarkable speed, extraordinary agility, unmatched durability, acute senses, and an extended lifespan, far beyond the realm of ordinary beings. In addition to his inherent vampiric traits, Olrox possesses a mastery over dark magic, a skill that adds a layer of danger to his already intimidating persona. Among his most notable magical abilities is his power to transform into mist. This ability allows him to become invisible, intangible, and capable of flight, making him a ghostly and elusive adversary. Shapeshifting is another feather in Olrox's cap of supernatural powers. His primary form in this regard is a massive feathered serpent-like dragon, echoing the imagery of the legendary god Quetzalcoatl. This ability not only showcases his strength, but also his deep connection to ancient myths and legends. Another fascinating aspect of Olrox's powers is his ability to summon entities. He can conjure 5 floating ghost skulls engulfed in blue flames, a sight that is as mesmerizing as it is terrifying. These summoned entities add an extra dimension to his already formidable arsenal of abilities. Olrox's prowess in combat is evidenced in his battles, notably his confrontation with Julia Belmont. He is a master martial artist and melee combatant, displaying a wide range of punches and kicks with expert precision. Additionally, he exhibits a high degree of skill in weapon mastery, particularly with a dagger, making him a dangerous opponent in any fight. Appearance in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. In Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Olrox's presence is one of grandeur and menace. He rules the upper part of Dracula's castle, a position that speaks volumes about his power and status. His character in the game is showcased in 2 distinct forms: a normal vampire adorned in a sumptuous armored suit, and a giant reptile-like humanoid capable of spewing fireballs. These 2 forms represent the duality of his nature, the refined and the monstrous. Olrox's personality, as depicted in the Ricordanza of the Gods Abyss novel, stands out among his vampiric kin. Unlike many vampires who indulge in destruction and sadism, Olrox's motivations are fueled by a sense of curiosity and a thirst for thrills. He exhibits a unique approach to life, attempting to conquer both chaos and humans, driven by the hypothesis that controlling the hearts of humans, which form chaos, would lead to its disappearance. As a master manipulator, Olrox strategically uses the fanatical loyalty of Graham's cult to fuel his ambitions. His goals include creating a replica of Dracula's castle and advancing his machinations, all under the guise of aiding Graham's return. His view of humans is nuanced rather than disdain. He finds human desires and behaviors intriguing and potentially perilous. Olrox's love for dangerous experiences is palpable, particularly evident in his battles with formidable opponents like Death, and his memorable duel with Alucard. His attitude towards his own life's safety is fearless, and even in the face of defeat or demise, he displays satisfaction rather than fear or desperation. Further powers and abilities. In his confrontation with Alucard, Olrox demonstrates superhuman strength, a trait assumed to be inherent in all vampires. His speed, reflexes, and reaction time are nothing short of supersonic. He maneuvers with such agility and swiftness that ethereal images trail behind him, a testament to his extraordinary speed. His magical prowess is further highlighted by his summoning abilities. During his battle with Alucard, Olrox opens portals to call forth bats and flying skulls, showcasing his control over dark forces. Another of his powerful abilities is the creation and projection of magical energy waves, a skill he uses effectively against Alucard. Olrox's true form as a vampire is revealed under duress. Uniquely, his true form is not bat-like, but rather that of a gigantic lizard. This transformation significantly boosts his strength, allowing him to cover considerable ground despite a decrease in speed. In this form, he can unleash devastating attacks like the Light Ray and Fireball Stream Breath, both of which require agility and strategy to evade. Role in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. In Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Olrox's role is pivotal. He appears as a boss in Olrox's quarters, initially non-hostile towards Alucard and seemingly inviting him to engage. However, upon interaction, he reveals his true intentions, engaging Alucard in a fierce battle. Defeated, Olrox undergoes a dramatic transformation, his lizard form skin peeling away to reveal his skeleton, which is then enveloped and destroyed by a beam of light, marking a spectacular and memorable end to his character in the game. In summary, Olrox from the Castlevania series epitomizes a richly complex and nuanced character in gothic fiction. An ancient Aztec vampire, his backstory is rooted in tragedy and loss, giving depth to his quest for vengeance and power. Olrox's unique vampiric abilities, including enhanced physical traits, dark magic, and shapeshifting, along with his ability to transform into mist and summon spectral skulls, establish him as a formidable force. His narrative arc weaves through themes of love, revenge, and political intrigue, highlighted in his interactions with characters like Julia Belmont and Richter, and his involvement in the schemes surrounding Countess Erzsebet Bathory. In Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Olrox's role as a curious and thrill-seeking antagonist further diversifies his character, showcasing his combat prowess and strategic acumen.
I am Segment, goddess of war, mistress of dread, lady of slaughter, she who mauls.
In the grim narrative of Netflix's animated series Castlevania Nocturne, inspired by the iconic rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night games, Erzsebet Bathory emerges as the formidable and enigmatic main antagonist. Although her character shares a name with the historical Elizabeth Bartley, this incarnation is distinctly different, endowed with chilling depth and a unique mythology. Erzsebet is depicted as a vampire countess with grand and malevolent aspirations, styling herself as the vampire messiah. Her terrifying power stems from an ancient and forbidden ritual where she consumed the blood of the Egyptian war goddess Sekhmet, claiming the deity's formidable abilities as her own. With the dark magic of a goddess coursing through her veins, Erzsebet harbors a cataclysmic ambition to envelop the world in an endless night, heralding an era of vampire dominion. Her sinister plan focuses on stifling the nascent flames of the French Revolution, a strategy that would allow Erzsebet to forge a new world order under the cold and relentless rule of her vampire kin. Her character is a blend of ancient power and timeless malice, a fitting villain in the dark and dangerous universe of Castlevania Nocturne. Even before her transformation into the fearsome Countess, her name was synonymous with unspeakable cruelty. Her hands, while still mortal, were stained with the blood of countless innocents, as she subjected many young souls to a horrifying ordeal of torture and murder within her dark halls. Her transformation into a vampire only amplified her bloodlust. Ascending to the title of Countess, she became a central figure of darkness, gathering a horde of vampires and fanatical humans, including the formidable Drolta. Together, they unleashed a reign of terror over any settlement that dared to challenge her sinister order. Her castle, a monument to her cruel reign, became a feared place where young women were imprisoned and subjected to her twisted whims. Among her many victims was Terra's sister, whom Erzsebet turned into a vampire, setting the stage for a tragic confrontation that forced Terra to commit a heart-wrenching act of mercy. Erzsebet's quest for power knew no bounds. Her most daring feat was consuming the blood of Sekhmet, imbibing the divine power of the goddess of war. However, her ambition was insatiable. Dreaming of a world engulfed in eternal night, she plotted to overthrow the sun god Ra himself, a step towards her ultimate goal of global dominion and forcing humanity into servitude and worship. To gather forces for this dark crusade, Erzsebet attracted a cabal of powerful vampires by exploiting their fears of social upheaval and the end of a privileged era. Even humans found themselves ensnared by her influence, most notably Abbot Emmanuel, a master forger who saw in Erzsebet a means to crush the revolutionary tide sweeping France. Together, they forged an alliance, united in their desire to stifle the winds of change and secure a world ruled by darkness and terror. In the year 1792, as France grappled with the aftermath of the Revolution and the suppression of royalist uprisings in the Vendée region, the nefarious Erzsebet set in motion a series of dark machinations. In a clandestine meeting, Drolta presents to Erzsebet a young girl, the daughter of a revolutionary, in whom Erzsebet takes an immediate interest. She keeps the girl close, gradually draining her blood while simultaneously plotting her next moves. It is during an assembly of her dark followers that Erzsebet learns of Emmanuel's secret daughter, Maria Renard. She quickly realizes the potential of exploiting this revelation to secure Emmanuel's unwavering loyalty. As she plans to extend her dominion to the shores of America, Erzsebet summons Olrox to be her guide in these new lands. However, she encounters a hint of insubordination, a challenge to her supreme authority that she quells with a demonstration of her dark powers, leaving Olrox with no choice but to submit to her will. Beneath the gloomy vaults of a church, Erzsebet confronts Emmanuel with knowledge of his daughter, demanding a blood sacrifice to cement their unholy pact. The moment is charged with tension and fear as Erzsebet leverages every facet of her power and cunning to bind the master forger to her dark cause. In a grand and terrifying display of her newly acquired power, Erzsebet triggers an eclipse, plunging the world into an unending night that marks the beginning of her reign of terror. She transforms into a formidable avatar of Sekhmet, confronting her enemies in the church, an ancient sanctuary that becomes the stage for a showdown. Unperturbed by a desperate resistance, Erzsebet effortlessly withstands the assaults of her enemies, revealing the depth of her power and the futility of their challenge. The story takes a cruel twist as Erzsebet reveals her true intention for Maria, which was not death, but perhaps a darker fate, eternal servitude as a vampire. This revelation disturbs those present, especially Emmanuel, who is forced to witness the horror of his daughter's potential fate. In a moment of desperation, Tara offers herself in place of Maria, only to be ensnared by the venomous bite of the Countess. As the church became a scene of chaos and despair, Erzsebet's cruel laughter echoed against the ancient walls. She sent Drolta to hunt down the fleeing heroes, ensuring that none who opposed her could find comfort or sanctuary. With Paris under the shadow of her eclipse and her enemies scattered and broken, Erzsebet's reign of darkness began to unfold, promising an era of blood and night. What elements of her appearance made Erzsebet Bathory an imposing figure? Erzsebet's presence is as captivating as it is terrifying, a testament to her vampiric nature. Towering over many, her statuesque figure is shrouded in an aura of supernatural elegance, marked by her pale skin and piercing red eyes that seem to glow with a malevolent light. Her strikingly red hair is an architectural marvel in itself, defying gravity in an upright style that asserts her regal and menacing demeanor. Crowning her head is a delicate yet sinister golden tiara, while a blood-red gem ominously nestled in her chest hints at the centuries of horror she embodies. Her attire is a mix of dark majesty and seductive danger. She is often seen wrapped in a dark blue gown, tailored with high collars and accented by brown contours that enhance her formidable figure. The gown, complete with gloves up to her arms, serves as both armor and statement, enveloping her in a gloomy charm. For her rare but formidable public appearances or when riding her chariot, she dons a golden armor, a tribute to the war goddess Sekhmet. This armor, combined with a wide, smooth white skirt, creates a distinct and intimidating silhouette. Her transformation into the avatar of Sekhmet marks a dramatic shift in her appearance. Her already striking features sharpen, becoming almost feral, while her eyes burn with ferocity. Her hair, now a deeper shade of blood red, bursts into a wild, mane-like cascade, echoing the fierce lioness deity. In this form, Erzsebet stands even taller, an imposing figure of divine wrath. Her attire in this form is a spectacle in itself, with a huge black cape and a bright yellow collar framing her, and a gown that gradients from blue with dark yellow accents to pure white at the bottom, centered with a golden medallion that draws attention. A metallic bra covers her, and her exposed midriff adds a stark contrast to the dark ensemble, completing her transformation into a deity of destruction and power. What traits are predominant in Erzsebet Bathory's personality? Tara's chilling description of Erzsebet paints a vivid portrait of a being whose essence is woven with the darkest threads of sadism and cruelty. On the surface, Erzsebet exudes an air of composure and refinement, her demeanor cold and imperturbable. She is a creature of deceptive elegance, extending cordiality to those who serve her and eloquently inspiring her followers with grandiose speeches filled with promises of power and glory. Her manipulative skill is unmatched, expertly pulling the strings of those around her to bend them to her will. However, beneath this cultivated facade lies a heart of pure malice. Erzsebet is consumed by vanity. Her arrogance and haughtiness permeate every word and action. She scorns those she considers inferior, treating them with total contempt and delighting in their humiliation. Her sadism knows no bounds. She finds twisted pleasure in the prolonged suffering of her victims, ensuring they remain lucid through unimaginable tortures, savoring their despair as she drains their essence. Her disdain for ideals of freedom and equality manifests in a brutal repression of anyone who dares to challenge the oppressive order she upholds. To her, the cries for freedom are nothing more than affronts to the hierarchy she maintains, a natural order where the nobility reigns supreme and all others exist to serve. She views the movements of emancipation and the revolutionary fervor sweeping France as personal affronts, challenges to be crushed under her foot in the most atrocious manner conceivable. Erzsebet's relationship with her vassals is one of ownership and domination. She demands unwavering obedience, viewing them not as individuals but as property to be used and discarded at her whim. Any hint of defiance is met with immediate and harsh retribution as she reinforces her authority through fear and violence. Her demand for sacrifices and absolute devotion borders on fanaticism, reflecting her need to be revered and feared as a deity. The acquisition of Sekhmet's powers has only exacerbated her monstrous ego, inflating it into a complete deity complex. She sees herself as the earthly incarnation of the war goddess, indignant at the notion of any deity rivaling her for worship. Her ambition is insatiable, and she desires to see the entire world prostrate before her in terror, her ultimate goal being to extinguish the sun and erase the legacy of her father Amun-Ra, plunging the world into eternal darkness where she reigns supreme as the sole object of veneration. Her very existence is a blight upon the earth, an unrelenting force of tyranny and terror. Erzsebet's story concludes as a dark parable about the corrupting influence of power. Her transformation from a noble human to a tyrannical vampire countess illustrates the extremes of cruelty and tyranny. Her sadistic reign, marked by a disdain for freedom and an insatiable thirst for control, positions her as an emblem of absolute evil. Ultimately, her story serves as a stark reminder of the perpetual struggle against darkness and the need for vigilance to preserve light and freedom. Erzsebet's legacy is a cautionary echo through time, underlining the profound consequences of unchecked malevolence.
I am Alucard, son of Dracula. And if you fight me, you will die, like thousands of vampires before you.
In the annals of Gothic tradition, few characters capture the essence of conflict and redemption as vividly as Alucard, the enigmatic protagonist whose life story intertwines with the darkest and most poignant aspects of human and supernatural existence. Alucard, also known as Adrian Tepesh, is the son of Vlad Dracula and Lisa Tepesh, born in the mid-1450s. He grew up in a world where his father's vampiric legacy contrasted with his mother's human compassion. This duality shaped his early life, with lessons in both supernatural knowledge and human values. However, the tragic burning of his mother, accused of witchcraft in 1475, driven by fear and ignorance, devastated Alucard and set him on a path of turbulence. This event also provoked Dracula's wrath against humanity, creating a conflict that Alucard, torn between his vampiric heritage and human morality, had to navigate. After a failed attempt to persuade his father to renounce vengeance, Alucard, at 19 years old, confronted Dracula in battle, resulting in a defeat that left him with a significant scar, symbolizing his internal conflict. This led him to seclude himself in a self-imposed slumber beneath the catacombs of Greshit, fueling legends about a sleeping soldier. In 1476, Alucard was awakened by Trevor Belmont, a monster hunter, and Sypha Belnod is a scholar and sorceress. Initially hostile, Trevor eventually recognized their common goal of stopping Dracula, forming a trio that combines Alucard's vampiric strengths, Trevor's hunting prowess, and Sypha's magical abilities. This alliance marked a shift from Alucard's solitude to a collective struggle against Dracula. Their journey led them to the Belmont Mansion, a repository of knowledge crucial for their mission. Here, Alucard confronted reminders of his dual nature, contributing to essential discoveries for their quest. The trio encountered and battled Dracula's nocturnal creatures, testing their cohesion and strength. A significant siege at the Belmont Mansion became the prelude to their final assault on Dracula's castle. Later, at Dracula's castle, amid emotional and physical battles, the trio confronted Dracula's forces. The climax occurred in Alucard's childhood room, where a devastating confrontation against Dracula unfolded. The fight ended with Alucard reluctantly killing his father, an act of mercy that ended Dracula's torment and reign of terror. After Dracula's fall, Alucard struggled with the weight of his victory. He assumed the role of guardian of the castle and the knowledge it contained, as suggested by Trevor. This period was marked by solitude and reflection, with Alucard committed to preserving history and learning. Alucard's seclusion was briefly interrupted by Sumi and Taka, two young vampire hunters. Their betrayal, driven by a misguided quest for power, deepened Alucard's sense of isolation, pushing him further into solitude. Alucard's life took a turn with the arrival of Greta and the villagers of Danishti, seeking help against monsters and creatures of the night. This led Alucard to assume a protective role, fostering a sense of community and purpose. He transformed the castle into a refuge, sharing knowledge and guiding the villagers. A defining battle at Dracula's castle against the nocturnal creatures saw Alucard and the villagers defending their new sanctuary. Alucard's leadership and strength were crucial, symbolizing his transformation from a solitary figure to a community leader. His legacy evolved from being Dracula's son to a beacon of hope and resilience. Alucard's story, from his conflicted beginnings to becoming a guardian and community leader, embodies themes of legacy, betrayal, and redemption. His journey with Trevor and Sypha highlights the importance of unity and trust. Alucard's tale transcends gothic horror, symbolizing the struggle against internal demons and the pursuit of a positive impact in the world, resonating as a reminder of the complexities of human and supernatural existence. Appearance. Alucard, impressively attractive, emanates an aura of youthful elegance. His facial features are finely sculpted, with a subtly pointed contour, accentuating his ethereal presence. His exceptionally pale complexion, almost porcelain-like, gives him a somewhat supernatural appearance. This pallor is further highlighted by his long, flowing pale blonde hair that falls in soft waves down his back, framing his face and enhancing his aristocratic bearing. His captivating golden eyes shine with an intensity that suggests both wisdom and deep melancholy. These eyes serve as windows to his complex personality, reflecting a mix of his human sensibility and vampiric lineage. Alucard's attire is as distinctive as his physical features. He typically wears fitted black leather garments that complement his slender and agile constitution. These include elegant black boots that add to his imposing stature. Draped over his shoulders, he often wears a coat with an elongated cape or a standalone lawn cape, both of which grant him an air of gothic nobility and mystery. This choice of clothing not only underscores his connection to the nocturnal and supernatural realms, but also reflects his refined taste. In his redesign for Nocturne, Alucard's appearance pays homage to his classic portrayal in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, particularly as shown in the iconic artwork by Ayami Kojima. In this iteration, his skin takes on an even paler, almost white tone, reflecting the ghostly hue of his hair, which also adopts a whiter shade. This change in coloration enhances his vampiric heritage, making him appear more ethereal and supernatural. His wardrobe undergoes a transformation, echoing the style of Symphony of the Night. Now, he wears a sophisticated black suit with matching boots, projecting the image of a refined gentleman. Beneath the suit, he sports a crisp white shirt, whose formality is accentuated with a matching white tie. Complementing this ensemble is a long and elegant black coat and an equally long black cape, which flow gracefully with his movements. This attire not only alludes to his aristocratic background, but also adds a layer of solemnity. and grace to his presence. Overall, Alucard's appearance is a harmonious blend of gothic elegance, supernatural allure, and a sense of timeless style, making him an unforgettable and visually striking character. Personality. Alucard, as the son of Vlad Dracula and Lisa Tepesh, embodies a complex mix of his parents' characteristics. His intelligence and combat skills echo those of his father, while the class and kindness of his mother deeply influence his behavior. He exhibits a calm and composed nature, rarely showing strong emotions, even in the heat of battle. Sypha, a close ally, describes Alucard as a deeply sad individual, whose sorrow resembles a bottomless icy well. This sadness defines much of his personal journey. At the start of the first season, Alucard's sense of justice is evident. Faced with his father's plan to annihilate humanity in revenge for his mother's death, Alucard proposes a more measured approach, suggesting only the execution of the responsible bishop. This demonstrates his reluctance to harm innocents, striving for retribution without further injustices. Alucard's interactions with Trevor Belmont initially are conflictive, marked by challenges and tests of strength, reflecting Alucard's respect for bravery and conviction. Despite their adversarial relationship, mutual respect and a tough brotherly love develop between them. With Sypha, Alucard shares a warmer relationship, although initially distant, respecting her intellect and appreciating her empathy. Alucard's narrative is strongly influenced by his sense of responsibility. His decision to kill his father, a choice made to honor his mother's memory and protect humanity, weighs heavily on him. This burden deepens after Dracula's death, as Alucard assumes the role of guardian of his father's castle and the Belmont refuge, leading to deep loneliness and a sense of isolation. His solitude worsens when betrayed by Taka and Sumi, his students. This betrayal, culminating in a traumatic confrontation, reinforces his isolation, leading him to ward off future visitors by displaying the corpses of Taka and Sumi, a grim echo of his father's methods. However, Alucard's path to healing begins with Greta, whose arrival offers him a renewed sense of purpose. Her influence, along with the responsibility of protecting her village, begins to heal his emotional scars. His admiration for Greta's leadership and dedication evolves into mutual respect and attraction. Alucard's transformation is completed with the founding of Belmont Town, where he assumes the role of protector and educator of the community. Surrounded by friends and a new sense of belonging, Alucard discovers happiness, a stark contrast to his previous loneliness and despair. Throughout his journey, Alucard's personality evolves from being a solitary and afflicted individual to a leader and protector, deeply influenced by his relationships, experiences, and an inherent sense of justice and morality. Powers and abilities. Alucard, as a Dhampir, exhibits extraordinary physical and supernatural abilities. He possesses strength, speed, reflexes, agility, and endurance far surpassing human or average vampiric capacities. He can effortlessly move heavy objects and deliver powerful strikes, as seen in his battle against Trevor. He also has high resilience and rapid regeneration, tolerating pain exceptionally well and healing quickly from wounds. This ability was evident when he recovered from injuries inflicted by Trevor, and during his battle against his father. Due to his vampiric heritage, Alucard ages very slowly and can transform his cape into wings for flight, which resemble those of a bird, unlike the bat wings of other vampires. A derivative of this ability is his capacity to transform into a wolf or a group of bats, showcasing his vampiric nature. Alucard has shown competence in magic and can use telekinesis, especially in manipulating his sword for combat and defense. Moreover, he has demonstrated the ability to float and fly at high speeds, even creating shockwaves during intense battles. This Dhampir is a master in hand-to-hand combat and fencing, holding his own against formidable opponents like Trevor Belmont, Dracula, and other powerful vampires. He possesses a genius-level intellect, having been extensively educated by his parents. His knowledge spans various fields, including ancient languages and monster lore, and he also has an understanding of alchemy, though he does not practice it extensively. Alucard's combined powers and abilities not only make him a formidable warrior, but also a guardian of immense magical knowledge and experience. His unique heritage grants him a mix of vampiric and human traits, making him a significant force against supernatural and mortal threats. His physical prowess, coupled with his intellectual capacity, position him as a key figure in battles and strategic planning, especially in the defense of humanity against dangers from other worlds. In conclusion, Alucard's story is more than a gothic horror tale. It is a narrative rich in symbolism and meaning. It speaks of the eternal human themes of battling one's internal demons, the search for belonging, and the desire to make a positive impact in the world. Thus, his legacy is not defined by his vampiric lineage, but by the choices he made and the paths he chose to follow. Alucard remains a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest times, there is the possibility of redemption and light. His story, woven into the fabric of Gothic mythology, continues to resonate as a powerful reminder of the complexity of the human and inhuman condition. Count Vlad Tepes, also known as Dracula, is the main antagonist in the animated adaptation of Castlevania by Netflix and Powerhouse Animation, based on the character of the same name from the video games. He serves as the primary antagonist in the first and second seasons, the overall posthumous antagonist in the third season, and a minor yet crucial character in the fourth and final season. The story follows the backdrop of the games, referencing the feud between Dracula and Leon Belmont, while hinting that Dracula might also have been the infamous Prince Vlad III of Wallachia. Dracula rose to become the strongest of vampires and the leader of his race. He harbored a disdain for humanity and was notorious for being a vampire of pure brutality, known for impaling his victims and massacring entire villages if they wronged him or displeased him in any way. In late medieval Europe, in Wallachia, Dracula lived alone in a castle capable of magical teleportation. He also possessed a vast wealth of scientific knowledge, stored deep within the castle. To deter visitors or thieves, Dracula displayed the impaled corpses of his victims at the front of the castle grounds, a warning promising a brutal and painful death to those who dared to ignore it. In 1455, he received an unexpected visit, a woman named Lisa, who was conducting research to improve medicine and wanted to become a doctor. She came to Dracula to learn from the science only he knew, but he threatened her with his distrust of humans. To his surprise, Lisa was not afraid and encouraged him to explore the changing world. Dracula was drawn to her and welcomed Lisa into his home. At some point later, Dracula married Lisa. Together they had a son named Adrian, who would later be known as Alucard. They then lived in a cabin on the outskirts of Targovist, where Lisa continued her medical research. At his wife's urging, Dracula traveled the world to learn about its people and their humanity. During his travels, he met and befriended two misanthropic humans who were master demon forgers, Hector and Isaac. In 1475, Vlad's happy days with Lisa came to an abrupt and tragic end. One night, returning home from his travels, he discovered that the cabin where the two had lived was completely burned down. He then encountered Mrs. Juvara, who had been treated by Lisa. While she was placing flowers, Vlad learned from her that Lisa had been arrested on false charges of witchcraft and was sentenced to death. Enraged, Vlad abandoned his human identity and became Dracula once more. He then warned Mrs. Juvara to take her family and leave Wallachia before teleporting in a column of fire. Arriving at the site of Lisa's execution, Dracula demanded to know what happened to his wife. When the bishop proclaimed she was a witch and he himself was just a myth, the vampire became furious and gave the people of Targovist a year to make peace with God before his return to destroy them. Returning to his castle, Dracula prepared to summon an army from hell in a year. However, his son Alucard appeared and pleaded with him not to kill innocent people. Dracula shouted that there were no innocents left because no one acted to save Lisa. Alucard attacked Dracula but was quickly defeated and allowed to leave afterwards. Dracula approached Hector and Isaac respectively to help create his new army with different perspectives, as Isaac immediately understood the need for genocide, while Hector preferred a more humane way of sacrificing humans. Nonetheless, both agreed to help build an army of night creatures from the dead. A year later, Dracula appeared in Targovist, as promised, before the Archbishop and the people celebrating Lisa's death and calling his existence a farce. He unleashed his army in Targovist, massacring the population, and the horde of night creatures proceeded to descend upon the rest of Wallachia. As the war dragged on and news of his horde's failure to kill the people of Greshid, Dracula called his vampire generals from around the known world to his castle to discuss his plans. His war council protested the state of the war, particularly the lack of strategy, where Dracula introduced his master forgers, Hector and Isaac, to his council as his new confidants to lead the war more effectively. This decision caused discord and outrage among the vampires, but Dracula silenced their protests. Despite this, discussions continued unchecked within the vampire leadership, with Dracula disheartened in his study or irritated by the fights. Carmilla soon arrived. However, instead of providing stability, she questioned Dracula's priorities in the war, starting with why he hadn't turned Lisa into a vampire in the first place, greatly enraging Dracula. Unknown to Dracula, Carmilla planned to assume power over the vampire world by inciting disloyalty among the vampire generals, and even between Hector and Isaac. Although she successfully manipulated Hector, Isaac was loyal to Dracula to the extreme. Even the Viking vampire Godbrand began to wonder what vampires would do in the future once humanity was extinct, fearing what vampires would delight in. Dracula only expressed disinterest and anger at Godbrand's concerns, which the Viking took as Dracula wanting to die, to be reunited with his wife and willing to let all vampires starve in the attempt, confirming that Dracula had gone mad. The situation between the vampires and their lord became complicated when details of the failure in Greshid came to light, that the villagers had help from a Belmont and that Alucard had awakened. Although he wasn't concerned about Alucard, the revelation that a Belmont, one of the few forces in the world that could truly threaten vampires, remained alive and awakened surprise and fear within them. In the end, the vampires grew tired of their current state and decided to invade the city of Braila and feed on its people. At that moment, Carmilla made her move against Dracula, causing most of his forces to assault his castle and try to kill him. However, her usurpation was crushed when Dracula dispatched most of her forces, and Alucard, Trevor Belmont, and Sypha Belnadhes arrived and killed the vampire generals. Isaac confirmed the presence of Alucard in Belmont and advised Dracula to return to his study. Dracula was moved by Isaac's loyalty and decided to save him from the intruders by sending him to the desert from whence he came, to Isaac's surprise and protest. Alone in his study, Dracula finally faced his son again, who claimed that his war had ended in his mother's name. Dracula responded that the war endured in Lisa's name. Regardless, although Alucard lamented with Dracula over Lisa's death, he refused to allow him to commit genocide. Dracula remained unmoved, reminding and recalling to Alucard that he couldn't stop him before. Alucard agreed but replied that he was alone before, in which Trevor and Sypha entered, ready to face the Lord of Vampires. Although Alucard initiated the attack, Dracula easily defeated his son and his allies, but together they gained an advantage to wound Dracula. Trevor's skill with the Morning Star Whip wounded and enraged Dracula enough to summon a burning magma orb over the trio. Despite his power, the three combined their forces to push back the fire orb, destructively sending it to him and Alucard through the castle to the central library. There, the father and son engaged in a vicious and brutal fistfight that took them both throughout the castle, but it became evident that Dracula was the stronger of the two. At that moment, Alucard armed himself with a wooden stake and stated that Dracula knew he died when Lisa did and that he wanted to die too, calling his war the longest suicide note in history. Dracula, angered once more, hits his son, forcing Alucard to strike his father with the stake, but he misses his heart. Dracula continued to beat his son deeper through the castle, but Alucard refused to back down, despite being overpowered. In the end, their battle took them to the room where Alucard grew up, the same room he and his beloved Lisa built for their son. Seeing the room and reminiscing about the memories he shared with his wife, restored a semblance of sanity, realizing he was killing his son, the best gift Lisa gave him. In his deepest moment, Dracula confirmed that as a result of his actions, he should already be dead. At that moment, Alucard armed himself again with a wooden stake made from his bedpost, and stabbed Dracula in the heart, heartbroken and crying blood tears. Dying, his body decaying rapidly, Dracula's form approached Alucard, but before he could do anything, Trevor and Sypha arrived and Belmont decapitated Dracula, thus finally killing him. Sypha then used her magic to burn Dracula's remains, which exploded into a fearsome black demonic cloud that spread through the castle before dissipating completely, leaving behind only his wedding ring. Dracula, the most powerful vampire in the world and the apex of his species, would meet his demise as a result of the actions of the Church, forcing his son and the heroes of humanity to rise and put an end to his madness. Although Alucard committed this act, he asserts that Dracula had died long ago when his mother Lisa passed away, with his castle empty and the internal knowledge too important to be left unattended. Alucard decides to take custody of the castle to ensure that the stored knowledge is neither stolen nor destroyed. Trevor even offers Alucard the remains of the Belmont stronghold to also ensure the safety of the knowledge collected by the Belmonts. Alucard, surprised and grateful, accepts. Trevor and Sypha then depart to forge a life together, leaving Alucard in the castle, where, alone in a study, he laments and cries over the loss of his loved ones. In the vampire world, the deaths of Dracula and his generals leave a power vacuum, with abandoned night creatures and upstart vampire factions wreaking havoc in the war-devastated region. Carmilla plans to take control of the vampire species, betraying and enslaving Hector with the intention of using his skills as a master forger to replenish her forces, returning to Styria with Hector in chains. Meanwhile, in the desert to which he was banished, Isaac decides to continue Dracula's war against humanity, and seek revenge against Carmilla and Hector for their betrayal. Starting with a group of bandits, Isaac kills humans unfortunate enough to cross his path, and converts their bodies into night creatures, growing his army over time. Not long after Dracula's death, a cult formed in the town of Lindenfeld with the hidden intention of bringing him back from the dead. Sala, the head of the village's priory, prepared a dark ritual to open a portal to hell through the infinite corridor. He was aided and even inspired in this task by a night creature known as the Visitor, whose blood would complete the ritual. When the portal opened, Saint Germain, a man investigating the cult, discovered that Dracula was in hell alongside his wife Lisa. When Dracula tried to reach the portal, Saint Germain, with the help of Trevor Belmont, killed the Visitor and closed the portal. Saint Germain disappeared into the infinite corridor in the process, but prevented Dracula from returning to Earth. Following the thwarted attempt to resurrect Dracula in Lindenfeld, several other groups would plan to do the same, covering 6 weeks of preparation and carefully planning in time to bring back the vampire lord. It became clear that the role and image of Dracula in both the human and vampire worlds were something sacred. Although Trevor Belmont and Sypha Belneds would traverse the fields of Wallachia, seemingly endlessly stopping hordes of Dracula cults and worshippers, it would not be enough. The goal of restoring the deceased Dracula became a shared objective by many, including the once righteous Count Saint Germain, who had become unhinged in his quest to reunite with his lover, who had disappeared into the infinite corridor. To once again bring Dracula and his wife out of hell, a sacrifice was necessary. A band of vampire magicians had assembled a body stitched from both male and female body parts. The disfigured hybrid was intended to imprison both Tepesh and create a hermaphrodite, a dichotomy of two separate sexes intertwined in the same body. With the addition of enchantments and the power and rage of Dracula, this abomination had the ability to become a rubis, a tool strong enough to control the infinite corridor like the night creature in Lindenfeld, the Visitor. However, due to the sheer trauma of being torn from hell and brought back to the land of the living, along with the fear of Lisa's torment, Dracula's rage would know no bounds and be nothing but hate, malice, and destruction incarnate. This unknown information served as the definitive end of the true manipulator and deceiver of the series, who is death itself. The clouded Saint Germain, who had stripped himself of his morality to save the woman he loved, believed he controlled the entire procedure. However, in truth, he was deceived by an English vampire named Varney, disguised as an alchemist who had incited Germain to fully commit to his magician's education, which in turn revealed to be death itself. Ultimately, this plan was orchestrated by the eternal death-devouring creature due to its anger over Dracula's disappearance. The Vampire King's attack on the human race would have fed death incomparably, and made it the most powerful being on the planet. As a being incapable of interacting with war and magic, death relied on murderous people like Dracula to keep it well-fed. Therefore, it wished to restore Dracula to his original plan, only now even more uncontrollable and insane. They managed to bring the Tepesh couple to Dracula's castle and to the hermaphrodite, which was struggling to contain the two. Fortunately, their torture was interrupted when Alucard, Trevor, and Sypha destroyed the body, unknowingly releasing the spirits of the Tepesh. The two souls awoke confused and suddenly came back to life. The next day, Dracula and Lisa took clothes from strangers and rented a room in a house, where they tried to make sense of things. Inevitably, they decided that they both had a second chance and chose to use it. The Tepesh realized it would be better if they left their son alone for the moment and tried to end things, seeing how much devastation both of their deaths had caused. Dracula, uncharacteristically calm, suggested they travel to a remote place, a solitude suitable for them. He said he had been reading about an English town called Whitby, near the coast, with about 20 houses, little sun, and fish. Then, the two declared they could never survive without each other and fell asleep together in bed, finally embracing and awaiting a new and peaceful future. Personality. In this iteration, it's unclear how much of the traditional Dracula and Castlevania lore applies to this Dracula's backstory. Therefore, Dracula's background remains largely a mystery. What is clear is that by 1455, he had once killed humans and had been in conflict with Leon Belmont, but now he avoided them and lived an isolated life in his castle. Given Dracula's extreme intelligence, physical superiority, and his interaction with Lisa, it is strongly implied that he views humans as significantly inferior life forms. Where once he was involved in human affairs, by 1455 he saw no sense in wasting time with peasants. Though intelligent and of lordly stature, Dracula lacks charm. He has a wild and threatening nature, which only intensified after Lisa's death. While many would use weapons in combat, it is known that he uses his own claws like those of a lion or bear. Lisa herself noted his lack of charm and suggested that he might relearn manners from her. During their years of marriage, he took this seriously and had a much more human demeanor than usual. Before succumbing to madness and depression, Dracula would not suffer any insult, and delighted in meticulously planning the revenge of those who wronged him. Using both his supreme power and his mind, he maneuvered his prey before surgically striking his targets. This was demonstrated when 40 merchants offended him. He issued a threat that ensured the women and innocent children fled and understood the psychology of the merchants, who would stay in the city to protect their gold. He then killed those 40 men and only those 40, showing mercy to the rest of the city, but perhaps doing so to make it very clear that his massacre was not random. It was the cost of a transgression against Dracula. This would change in his war against humanity, where Dracula was devoid of pleasure, only desiring the death of everything and everyone. When Dracula and Lisa met and she asked to learn from him, they quickly developed a strong mutual attraction. Neither had met anyone like the other before. Dracula, of course, was attracted to Lisa's beauty, but even more so by her personality. He described her as definitely different from most humans he had known. Lisa's courage, courtesy, intelligence, and kind nature impressed him, and he allowed her to study with him. They soon married and had a son named Adrian Tepesh. Lisa saw the best in Dracula and immediately recognized that he had the potential to improve the lives of humans everywhere with his knowledge. As per Lisa's wishes, he would spend much of his time traveling. He hoped that he would also learn from his travels and from humans as she did from him. Dracula himself seemed to appreciate her spirit, though his subsequent actions imply that he could never see other humans the way Lisa wished he would. In any case, the light of his experiences only turned to more ashes after he returned home to be informed that his wife had been executed. When Lisa was unjustly killed in 1475, Dracula felt deeply resentful towards humanity. He no longer viewed them as peasants, but now considered them all animals he could no longer tolerate. He would later admit that she was the only true love he had ever known. Immediately after Lisa's bones turned to ashes, Dracula rose from the flames of his wife and demanded an explanation. He became enraged upon learning that his wife had been killed for unjust dogmatic stupidity, and grew even more furious when the bishop who ordered the execution denied Dracula's existence. At that moment, Dracula proclaimed that he would take everything from the citizens of Wallachia, and leave no sign that they ever existed. Although he surely knew his wife would not want him to take revenge, his heart was now so embittered that it was filled with absolute misanthropy. Dracula believes all humans are guilty of his wife's death, as none tried to stop the unjust murder, and therefore, when Alucard tried to reason with his father to kill only those responsible, Dracula angrily refuted him. To Dracula, Lisa was the only good thing humanity had produced, and humanity had killed her. He was even more than willing to severely injure his own son when he tried to reason with him and prevent him from committing genocide. Despite all this, Dracula seems to retain fractions of what he became after marrying Lisa. For example, although he had Alucard at his mercy, he did not pursue him further after inflicting a serious wound, which seems to show that the only person with whom Dracula has any remaining attachment was his son, as he could have easily killed him but let him escape, which apparently means he simply wanted to incapacitate Alucard long enough for his massacre to be completed. Also, unusually, when he warned the old woman to flee, showing that at least he has a softer side for those who were not blinded by the accusations of the reasons for his wife's death enough to not want to kill them. It is worth noting that he also issued a 1-year warning to humanity to make peace. Dracula was even more disappointed with humanity that no human paid attention to his warning or repented before him, telling them before unleashing his army that they had their chance. A year later, Dracula began his war of extermination, unleashing an army from hell in Targovishte, ordering his army to kill all humans and accepting his future eternity of endless hate. Despite being on a quest for vengeance to end all humanity, Dracula becomes increasingly downtrodden over time, largely isolating himself from the rest of his court and leaving the command of his army in the hands of his forge masters, Hector and Isaac. He does not care much for strategy, as long as all humanity dies in the end, to the great discomfort of his generals. Dracula planned to use machines to darken the sky and allow vampires and hordes of night creatures to rule the world. However, many of his generals and Alucard observe that Dracula's plans are self-destructive. Godbrand realizes that the human genocide will mean the end of the food supply for vampires, and that no one would survive Dracula's plans for the world. Alucard notes that Dracula is dragging the entire world with him into the longest suicide note in history. When Alucard storms his castle with Trevor and Sypha, Dracula shows great care towards Isaac by banishing him to the desert, not wanting his friend to be killed. Dracula really admired Isaac's unbreakable loyalty, recognizing him as one of the greatest of his kind. He mercilessly overwhelms and beats Trevor and Sypha, mocking them for their inferiority, but never deals the fatal blow to Alucard, mainly ignoring his son unless he attacks, at which point he counterattacks savagely but does not deal any truly decisive blows. Only after being angry enough was he willing to brutalize his son, but even in such murderous rage, his love for his son shone through, when after reaching the room where he and his wife raised Alucard, Dracula finally came out of his murderous rage and started crying upon realizing he was killing the greatest treasure Lisa had given him. Dracula realized at that moment that Alucard had been right about him. He had been dead inside and fallen into madness the day Lisa was killed. He subsequently allowed his son to kill him. In short, Dracula is a broken and embittered man trying to kill all humanity in revenge, but he feels no pleasure or joy in this, nor does he care about the fact that he could potentially starve his own army in the process. He is so indifferent that Alucard believes Dracula only waged war on humanity because he wanted to die, because he is figuratively dead without Lisa. Dracula died as a broken being, but also expressing the love he had left for his son, the greatest gift his beloved wife had given him, which allowed him to finally be at peace as he reunited with his wife in the afterlife. Dracula's spirit briefly appeared before Alucard and showed no hostility, briefly nodding before disappearing, apparently making peace with his son. Death was not the end of Dracula, but a new beginning. Now, a spirit in hell, he could be with Lisa again. The choice to seek her out was Dracula's first sane act since he died. After he found her, they embraced and found comfort even in hell itself. Being with his beloved Lisa, Dracula regained sanity and tranquility. Dracula and Lisa would be revived and chose not to return to their old lives so that their son Alucard could find closure to all that bitterness. With Lisa by his side, Dracula was enthusiastic about living with a small community of humans in a quiet area of England. They were finally free to start a new peaceful life together. Powers and abilities. Dracula is known to be the strongest vampire in the world. He possesses many of the usual characteristics of vampirism: fangs, claws, pale skin, and drinks blood. He does not appear to be subject to the usual weaknesses of vampires, as seen in how he asked if Lisa was armed with silver, crosses, and garlic, calling her superstitious, which implies he is immune to them, or at least they have minimal effect on him. So far, Dracula has not been seen in sunlight, although he traveled on foot around the world for many years, implying that he was also immune to it. He can go without drinking human blood without problems, as seen in how he, in his depression over Lisa's death, sat in his library without drinking blood for months and still demonstrated being in full power when he fought directly. The only confirmed weakness of vampires that works on Dracula is a stake driven directly into his heart, along with decapitation. Additionally, Dracula is immortal and cannot die of old age. The details of his immortality are not yet clear, but as an immortal, Dracula retains his physical prime and, despite his imposing appearance, has extraordinary superhuman strength, speed, durability, endurance, and reflexes beyond his appearance. He is capable of easily crushing hard objects like solid stone with his own hands and was able to defeat Alucard in an instant, and leave him seriously injured despite his own resistance, recovery, speed, and reflexes. He could kill several merchants and fellow vampires by himself without any effort by quickly and easily dodging several arrows fired by an expert shooter. In addition, Dracula was able to seriously injure Sypha, leaving several severe scratches that required bandages, completely surpassing Trevor in terms of physical power, as he did not react when Trevor hit him in the face, effortlessly deflected Trevor's attacks, and quickly defeated the Belmont with a single punch in the stomach. Dracula also survived the Morning Star Whip, which killed all vampires hit by it in a single blow, although it did briefly bring him to his knees and informed Belmont that it was at least a formidable weapon for vampires, even if not for him, and recovered from Sypha and Alucard, returning his own massive dark inferno without any damage. Dracula still retained more than enough power to quickly overwhelm Alucard, capable of breaking the castle and constantly wearing down and injuring Alucard and sending him flying through the rooms. Also being able to withstand many high-speed hits from Alucard's teleportation speed and eventually stopping him by grabbing his head in the middle of the attack. Most likely, it would have been impossible for them to have killed him if it had not been his son fighting him, who revealed to Dracula how crazy he had become. Dracula's supreme power is respected by all vampires and monsters. When he calls, demons respond without disobedience, and vampires must at least pay attention to the call. Dracula has built a solid relationship with his two forge masters, Hector and Isaac, allowing him to create an army of night monsters that mindlessly obey each of his orders. Vampire lords decide for themselves if they are loyal to Dracula, but none would dare to openly oppose him, or at least not before preparing extensively. Dracula has tremendous control over fire. He can transform his body into flames and project himself through fire anywhere. He can manifest fire anywhere, even in the sky. He can also teleport through flames. When fighting the trio at the end, Dracula manifested a huge burning ball of fire similar to molten lava. It was powerful enough that Sypha couldn't deflect it without the help of Trevor and Alucard. Dracula has the ability to defy gravity and float above the ground. He can move through the air at speeds far superior to those of his son, surpassing and hitting his son to subdue him to the ground quite quickly. Interestingly, bats often gather around the castle. It has been shown that Dracula projects his own image and voice through flocks of crows. Dracula wielded extraordinary power and mastery as a martial artist, and was able to achieve this degree of power using only the power of his body and his millennial experience. His powers and physical abilities were extraordinary, and he has been seen to have a methodical but wild fighting style, throwing powerful punches with millimeter precision and using his reflexes to easily deflect even the most talented fighters' attacks. Even distant opponents were not safe, as he could instantly scale walls and kill with perfectly directed blows and cuts. His abilities allowed him to effortlessly kill many merchants and vampires, instantly advance and seriously injure Alucard, quickly dominate Trevor Belmont armed with his whip, and even weakened by having been hit by the Morning Star Whip and his fireball deflected. He could still beat Alucard for most of their altercation. Dracula, having been an ancient immortal who had accumulated centuries of forgotten knowledge and innovated on them, is easily the most informed being in world history, to the point that Alucard called him a repository of centuries of learning and knowledge, and noted that an inestimable amount of knowledge would be lost with his death. During his immortal life, he had become an extremely brilliant scientific, engineering, and technological genius, and is the world's leading expert in many fields. He was a competent master, passing on his knowledge of medical science to Lisa, and effectively turning her into the best doctor in her city, capable of feats beyond any other, and also having shaped Alucard into becoming a highly educated person. It is recognized that even with the knowledge of the Belmonts in Castlevania, Alucard would not really rival Dracula. Many of his inventions and constructions are centuries ahead of their time, and some are even beyond 21st century technology. In addition, he is very educated and knowledgeable in the use of magic, which he has applied to his inventions. It is strongly implied that he himself designed and built the castle. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest content. We love hearing from our viewers, so please leave a comment and share your ideas for future videos. Thanks for your support, and we can't wait to see you again in our next video.